Hi all, welcome to the South Delta United Player Pathway Parent Workshop for 2025. I'm Chris Cerroni, the Sporting Director for the club, and I'll be walking through some information as it relates to the pathway in our club, in BC, and what it looks like for the youth players. We'll be looking at the background to a pathway, linking that with the stages of development, and as previously shared, looking at what environments we have at SDU and how that relates to British Columbia, professional youth environments, and then we'll have a recap. So what we wanted to look at first was what a pathway looks like and what the experience is for the player. And typically when we use the term pathway, we really feel that it is one way to success, one route, a stepping stone approach. And as this diagram really highlights, that may be our expectation that success is a linear approach, but ultimately the reality is non-linear. We may have a player that's selected at one age, not at the next, then has progression with their development, and their path looks a little bit different to just highlighting that there's a stepping stone approach to the pathway. So what we really want to highlight for an expectation piece is it isn't linear. There's pitfalls, there's positives, there's negatives, there's various types of experience a player might have, and that all is packaged into what level of play they might be at within that moment in time, but we want to focus on their long-term development. This image here just captures a real simple example to remind us that growth and development of a player happens at different rates, different stages, different times, and can look very different. So I think what it really tries to highlight is players develop at different ways. And if we put our parent hat on, it's important to focus on our child and where they are in their own development, monitor and mark the short-term successes that over time will become long-term successes and ultimately looking to achieve their goals. Here are some definitions from sporting associations looking at rugby, soccer and hockey of their pathway from either a national or a provincial level. And some of the buzzwords that are highlighted here include it's a system, it's an approach, it's a philosophy, a model, and a roadmap. And all these items relate to it being a progressive pathway for players to develop to ideally reach their full potential. In Canada, we define the stages of development through the long-term player development model. This links the youngest players at U4 that are in introductory soccer all the way up to adult players who are playing soccer for enjoyment, as well as those that are representing Canada at the national level. It really promotes lifelong enjoyment. It provides a structured development pathway, describes best practices for player development, and creates long-term excellence. Taking the LTPD model and looking at it from a soccer lens in BC, there are 7 stages of development, starting with active start, fundamentals, and learn to train. This is classed as the children's environment, and small-sided game formats are provided for these players. These may be familiar with you as South Delta United provide these age groups and levels of play within our club. Then when we move into youth, on the left-hand side, we have development environments classed as train to train and train to compete. These are higher level environments, and you may be familiar with the BCSPL, the provincial program, Vancouver Whitecaps and Vancouver Rise youth professional environments would be captured under stages 4 and 5. On the right-hand side is Soccer for Life Stage 7, and this goes into the teenage youth years with South Delta. And if we stay on that side, we move into the adult environment for Soccer for Life. And then on the left-hand side is the performance environment Train to Win. This is Stage 6, and this would include the professional and national levels of play at an adult level. This chart here gives a high-level snapshot of some information with the programming that the club provides against the LTPD stages. So previously mentioned Active Start, Fundamentals, Learn to Train, and Soccer for Life. We look at the age groups that we provide, the genders, the season durations, and there are some, changes here from fall to winter and not adding the additional spring. We look at the session and game ratios, session duration, coach to player ratio, and what the program would fall under, whether that be our games day program for the minis, the team development program, or the academy programming, and then highlighting what levels that this offers with house development and divisional. Ultimately, every club has these LTPD stages, and these are the examples of what we provide from a South Delta United perspective. They have to fall within Canada Soccer and BC Soccer standards and guidelines, and this is what we're working towards within the club. The numbers is something that we wanted to draw attention to, just to give you a snapshot of where the club is at against smaller clubs in the province, as well as the largest clubs in the province. So the smallest club in the province is typically around 200 players at an entry level. And then there are clubs that have over 4,000 players. This would be from minis to adults, but 4,000 is typically a larger club in the province. SDU is around 1,400 players, so we are a small to medium club. And then on the right-hand side, this is a real high level of, we're classed as a community club, and the level that is above South Delta United, and some of you may be familiar with the term, is the BC Soccer Premier League or the BCSPL. And I previously mentioned this on the LTPD slide, which highlighted that this environment and clubs that operate in this environment provide training for players that are playing within stage 4 and 5, train to train and train to compete. So really what I'm trying to share here is it's a higher level of player development environment that it provides for their players. And currently South Delta United highest level is within the learn to train stage, that is the age group beneath the BCSPL. With a snapshot of what South Delta looks like with the programming we provide, the level of play we provide, as well as the numbers related to the size of the club, I wanted to draw the perspective of what it looks like with the numbers across British Columbia as a province. So within BC, we have one provincial association. We have 4 professional clubs, including those in the MLS, the Northern Super League and the CPL. We have 11 semi-professional clubs in League1 BC. From a governance standpoint, there's 14 youth districts and 12 adult leagues, approximately 100 community clubs, and across the whole province, there's around 100,000 registered players. So if you look at South Delta United, we're obviously one club within 100, and we offer soccer services for 1,400 players out of approximately 100,000 players registered within BC. This image here dials down on the development and performance areas within stages 4, 5 and 6 of the LTPD model. So relating it to British Columbia, we've mentioned before that the first step into this environment is the BCSPL. So below this environment, we'd have a large amount of community clubs, South Delta United being one of those, and there's an opportunity for players to be identified and promoted into a club that has a BCSPL playing environment. The reason we want to support and encourage that is because then that player is on this pathway of development and performance, and potentially these are the opportunities that open up for those players. So the next level would be provincial programming. There would be the Vancouver Whitecaps youth professional environment, and they're also working as the Vancouver Rise on the female side. We've got Canada Youth National Team programming into semi-professional with BC League 1, and then into professional and national team. And on the right-hand side, there's some items to consider as well. There's an opportunity from this stream to go into university and college with being identified for a scholarship. And then Project 8, some of you may be familiar with, is where the Northern Super League originated from, and that's where the Vancouver Rise are playing this year, giving us a professional female team in BC. So, for those that have children or players that have aspirations to play at the highest levels, this is the levels and ages and environments that, from a South Delta United perspective, we need to make you aware of and support your pathway to potentially get into these environments. And as mentioned, that first entry point is the BCSPL for that U14 age group. So building off of the information previously shared, the BCSPL provides a development environment for boys and girls aged U14 to U18 and is positioned as the highest level of youth development community soccer within BC. Just to note, the age groups may be changing, so that may be different moving forward. But the purpose of the league is to provide players with a environment that caters for their development needs from a practice perspective as well as a competition outlet, with the ultimate goal of providing a platform for identification into higher levels. And as previously mentioned, that would be the provincial program and professional youth environments. They are associated with technical standards that the clubs in the BCSPL need to operate in order to maintain their status within the BCSPL. And those that may or may not be familiar, from Canada Soccer, there is a club licensing program, and clubs can apply to be a part of the BCSPL and have to meet certain technical, governance, administrational and structural standards over a number of years to then be allowed to enter the BCSPL at the earliest age. The history of the BCSPL, it's been around for over 10 years. It's had an evolution from oversight to governance to what the technical standards look like. And at this stage, the technical standards are focused across the training environment, the competition outlet, and coach education standards as well. In taking a further look at some of the high-level technical standards that the BCSPL has to deliver, as mentioned, it's in that train to train and train to compete stage of LTPD, and the season length has to be a minimum of 40 weeks activity. The practice to game ratio has to be a minimum of 3 sessions a week to 1 game. Practice duration minimum is 90 minutes. The practice size, i.e. the field available for training, would need to be half a field for every session. The coach certification is currently a minimum C license, but Canada Soccer are moving that certification to either a youth license and or B license. And then just for comparison across the country, this environment and the standards that it provides is called the BCSPL in BC, and Canada Soccer designate it as a player development program. And across the country, currently BC, Alberta, Ontario and Quebec all provide these environments within their province. So what this information really highlights is a snapshot of what technical standards are in place to provide the best environment possible for the players, noting that it is a pay-to-play environment, noting that resources are limited within club environments at a community level, but the real intent is to have some minimum standard on paper that ideally is being delivered on field from a practical standpoint, and the intent is to create a better environment for the players to help with their development and exposure to identification, as mentioned before. The next level above the BCSPL is the provincial program that BC Soccer provide. And what BC Soccer do is work with the BCSPL clubs and technical leads to identify players within the club environments to bring them into an identification group. And the intent of the program is to provide further development opportunities for the players. And so any player in the provincial program receives their 3 sessions a week with the BCSPL and ideally 1 additional session within the provincial program. Hence, a kid is getting more development opportunities and more practice time within the program. And then there is a development group that plays games against other professional entities, other provincial programs, League1 BC, semi-professional environments. And so to highlight the hierarchy of the pathway, a player in the BCSPL can be selected for the provincial program and gain additional training within that environment and additional identification opportunities to higher levels of play. So building on from the community environment within the BCSPL, the provincial program run by BC Soccer, the highest level of youth programming provided to players in BC is led by the Vancouver Whitecaps on the boys' side, as well as their collaboration with Vancouver Rise on the girls' side. This image here is taken from the Whitecaps pathway. It gives examples of their interaction and support with community clubs, with camps, clinics, and their network partner program. They then have a pay-to-play academy system in place for their younger ages. And then, as mentioned, they have their free of charge MLS Academy and Girls Elite Academy. The challenge for players in BC and Canadians in general is we have limited professional clubs across the country, as well as limited youth professional environments connected to those clubs. So the tip of the pathway and the pyramid here becomes very small because there's not an abundance of environments. So what happens is there's more emphasis on community clubs to run not just grassroots programming, but also higher development programming so that they can contribute to the development of BC and Canadian kids. And that would be something in South Delta with the academy, the team development program that we're building on. Those are the programs that we're trying to help support the players locally to get more skills, more soccer IQ, so that we can help support them with their journey and pathway if they have ambitions to play professionally or at the national level. So in recapping, I wanted to share the image of expectation and reality again. And even though we use the term pathway, and it does give that assumption that it is a linear approach that you go from one level to the next level, the reality is players all have different journeys and experiences. And so we want to support players in the short term, but be real mindful that there's a long-term approach to development, and some players' paths may look very different to others. So that was a message that we really wanted to share with people listening in today, and then relate it specifically to South Delta and where we fit within the pathway in BC. As shared previously, we're a community club and we operate underneath the BCSPL at this stage. So in 2025 and onwards, we'll be working with those players at that U12, U13, U14 ages to try and get more exposure, more awareness, more information on what the opportunities are for those players as it relates to the next level within the BCSPL. And really we want to target the players that have ambitions and desires to progress in this pathway here, i.e. they have dreams to play for Canada and play professionally. So that's one type of player we're looking to support, but we're also very, very mindful that the larger amounts of players we have in the club will be those players that want to play with their friends, enjoy their soccer experience. And so success there would look like a player that has come into South Delta United at U4 and played soccer with the club all the way up until their adult ages. So really the final message here is there's two versions of success that we're trying to support with the programming we're providing. One is development support for players that want to progress to the best of their abilities and have dreams to aspire, and those players that want to develop but enjoy their soccer and are comfortable in playing with their friends and staying with South Delta from youth environments all the way up to the adults environments. Finally, I appreciate those that have watched this video, and if you do have any questions that are specific to your child around the player pathway or just in general, please feel free to email me at chris@southdeltaunited.com, and I'll be happy to answer as many questions as possible. Thanks very much.